All right, so this video is about 45, 45, 90 triangles and 30, 60, 90 triangles. So I need you to do me a favor. If I highlight it, you highlight it. If I don't highlight it, don't highlight it. Okay? So these are special triangles. So I want you to think about when you first, a couple chapters ago when we had a triangle. Let me get a pencil that works. And I gave you this was 6, and this was x, and this was 82 degrees. And then you go, okay, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of tan. And you go tan of 82 equals 6 over x. You multiply both sides by x. You divide by 6, dot, dot, dot. You figure out what x was, okay? And then I might ask you to find y. So then instead of using tan, you would have used sine of 82 equals 6 over y. So that's a lot of work. Now there's special triangles, which means if you have a triangle that has a 45 degree in it, you don't need to do all of this work. There's a special triangle. If you look right here, there's a special triangle ratio that says that whenever you have a 45, 45, 90, the ratio is 1, 1, square root of 2. Okay? So let's just start with that. So we're going to do this whole first page is just everything the ratio of 1, 1, rad 2. So as soon as I say this is 45, I know automatically this is 45. Why? Because 45 plus 45 is 90, plus 90 is 180, and every triangle is 180 degrees. So every time I see that, I'm going to write the ratio. And see how it says these are called the legs, but where the 90 degree is, that looks a little bit blurry. That means the ratio would always be 1, 1, where the leg is, and the hypotenuse, or the long side, will always be rad 2. So I'm going to go 1, 1, rad 2. Okay? So when I'm doing that problem, the first thing I'm going to do, if I see it's a special one, like this 45, 45, 90, I'm going to go 1, 1, rad 2. Now they want me to find v, and they want me to find u. One way I could do it is I could go, okay, tan of 45 equals 4 over v, multiply both sides, blah, blah, blah. What a pain. But if it's a ratio, I can go 1 times what number gives me 4? 1 times 4 gives me 4. So that means I can figure out the other sides now. 1 times 4 is 4. So v is 4. And then if I'm going to multiply this by 4 and this by 4, I have to multiply this by 4. And 4 times the square root of 2 is 4 square root 2. So v is 4 rad 2, and u is 4 rad 2, and v is 4. Okay? So if it is that, you can do that. Now I want to show you, if I really wanted to, I'll show you a different way. This was 45. Sorry. I could go like this. Tan of 45 equals 4 over v. Let me move this over a little bit. Multiply both sides by v. V tan 45 equals 4. Divide by tan 45. Divide by tan 45. And I'm going to pick up my calculator to show you that you still can go this long way. I don't know why you would, but you can. So 4 divided by tan 45, and it should be 4. Perfect. And if you look, that's what I got. All right? So if you want to do it the long way, have fun. But if you want to do the ratio, so much better. Okay. As soon as I see this is 45, I'm going to label that this is 45. That means the ratio is now 1, 1, rad 2. So they gave us one side, which is 8. 1 times what number is 8? 8. So that means this is also times 8. So now I know y equals 8. And that means I have to multiply this by 8. And 8 times rad 2 is 8 rad 2. Okay? All right. So now let's go to the next one. Some of you go, wow, this is awesome. This is no big deal. Good. Because when we get to this one, it's a little bit more difficult. If this is 45 and this is 45, then boom, 1, 1, rad 2. This one's a little bit more difficult because this time they gave us the long side, the hypotenuse. So I have to go rad 2 times what number gives me 9 rad 2? Well, if you look, there's a 9 there. So that means it's times 9, because 9 times rad 2 is rad 2. So that means I need to multiply this by 9 and this by 9. When I do that, x equals 9. And 1 times 9, y equals 9. I don't know if you're noticing that these two sides are exactly the same. Why? because this is an isosceles triangle, and by definition, when the base angles are the same, the sides are the same. All right, let's go to another one. If you want to do these problems before me, that's great. This is 45, so that means this is 45. That means this is 1, 1, rad 2. So I have to go 1 times what number is going to give me 2 rad 2? Well, 1 times 2 rad 2 is 2 rad 2. So that means I multiply this by 2 rad 2. So that means B equals 2 rad 2. And then I have to multiply this by 2 rad 2. Okay, this one's a little bit more difficult, so let me go through it. I have 2 times rad 2 rad 2. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So all of that gave me 2. Then I have this 2, and so I multiply them. 2 times 2 is 4. Therefore, my A equals 4. Okay, we'll do other ones, don't worry. All right, let's go to number 5. Number 5, we got to remember that these are the legs. So since these are the legs, and this is 45 degrees, this is 1, 1, long side is always rad 2. Do you need to memorize that? Yes. So 1 times what number is 13? Times 13. That means this is also times 13, and this is also times 13. You've got to multiply the same thing. So that means 1 times 13 is 13. B equals 13. 13 times rad 2 is 13 rad 2. Let's do the next one. This is 45. This is 45. Therefore, it's 1, 1, rad 2. 1 times what number gives me 3 rad 3? 3 rad 3. So I multiply this by 3 rad 3. And I multiply this by 3 rad 3. So then when I look, 1 times 3 rad 3 is 3 rad 3. Okay. And then let me zoom out a little bit. And then when I do this one, I'm going to go 3 rad 3 times 2. So I'm going to write that out. 3 rad 3 times rad 2. So remember in the above, I went rad 2 times rad 2 is rad 4. So I'm going to go rad 3 times rad 2 is rad 6, or square root of 6. Here, the square root of 4 is 2. But here, I can't take the square root of 6. Since I can't take it, leave it. That means I'm done now. And I have U equals, let me put this up here, U equals 3 rad 6. Okay. Let's go to the next one. This one's going to be pretty crazy, okay? So, this is 1, 1, rad 2, because that's a 45. The problem is that I have to get to a 10. But this is a square root, and this isn't even a square root. So I'm going to show you some things. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can get you to see some patterns. Okay? So, if I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that's the square root of 9, which is 3. If I have the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, that's the square root of 25, that is 5. If I have the square root of 7 times the square root of 7, that's the square root of 49, which is 7. Do any of you guys notice something? If you multiply a square root by itself, you get that number. If you multiply a square root by itself, it's that number. If you multiply a square root by itself, it's that number. So, what do I mean by that? And don't worry, we'll do this one again. If I multiplied the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that would be 2. But I need to get 10. So I'd also need to multiply it by 5. So that means that's my ratio. Let me do a different one. If I had the square root of 3 and I had to get to a 9, I would multiply it by square root of 3 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. Then times the number 3 would be 9. This is a more difficult one, I understand. Okay, so let me do this one again now that I kind of went over that. So I need to go from a square root of 2 to a 10. Let me zoom that over a little bit. That means I would have to multiply it by square root of 2, because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2, but I need to get to 10. And then I also need to multiply it by 5. Therefore, my ratio is times 5 square root of 2. Let me show you it again. Because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2, times 5 is 10. So that means this is times 5 square root 2, and this is times 5 square root 2. Therefore, x equals 5 rad 2, and y equals 5 rad 2. We'll practice it more, don't worry, but that is difficult, that's why it's number 7. All right, number 8. So, this time I have, 45, 1, 1, rad 2. Okay, this time I need to go from a square root of 2 all the way to 3 rad 10. So it's still a square root. So that means if I multiplied by square root of 5, the square root of 2 times square root of 5 gives me the square root of 10. But then there's also a 3, so I multiply by 3. Therefore, my ratio is times 3 square root of 5. Because again, square root of 5 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 10, and there's the 3. So times 3 square root of 5 times 3 square root of 5, 1 times the square root of 1 times 3 square root of 5 is 3 square root of 5. And remember, they're the same thing, so y is 3 rad 5. Awesome. Okay, let's look at number 9. 45, 45, 90. 1, 1, rad 2. Oh, cool. When it's the 1, it's so much easier because it's just itself. Oops. 4 rad 3. That means this is times 4 rad 3, and this is also times 4 rad 3. Okay? 1 times 4 rad 3 is 4 rad 3. And then this is 4 rad 3 rad 2. The square root of 3 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 6. I can't take the square root of 6, so x equals 4 square root of 6. Last one over here. Okay. 1, 1, rad 2. So I need to go from a square root of 2 all the way to a 6. It is a square root, but I want the square root to go away, so if I multiply it by itself, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is just 2. But then I still need to get to the 6, so that means it would be 3. So the ratio is times 3 rad 2. Because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2 times 3 is 6. So times 3 square root of 2 times 3 square root of 2. Okay? So that means 3 times square root of 2, 3 rad 2 times 1 is 3 rad 2. And 1 times 3 rad 2 is 3 rad 2. Okay? So that is everything 45, 45, 90. So now you're going to be done with that video, and then you're going to see a second video that I'm going to call 30, 60, 90.